Today's Patreon shout-out comes to you with thanks for Kerry Driver. Disa the Restless versus Elavir, Yarrick and Kellen. We've got a bunch of colourless lands. We've got green for the Life from the Loam though, so yeah, we can risk doing some dredges in the early game. We might miss out on some Lhurgoyfs in the early game, but we have means of getting them back. Alright, a command tower on turn 1 is really good. That means we've got all 3 of our colours, so start off with a tap land. In my experience, in the attempts of getting games in with Disa, everyone just wants to look at us anyway, so we'll give them a reason with a 7-turn clock on the Field of the Dead. Sol Ring for Kellen, followed by Mere Retriever. So do we go for Life from the Loam now? I'm not in any particular rush to be dredging it out, because we've got plenty of lands, and I don't really want to waste the self-mill getting into Lhurgoyfs if we're not going to be cheating them in with the commander. We could always have this in play by turn 5, assuming that we can't get our commander out faster. And we've already seen a Bajuka Bog from our opponents, so yeah, let's go for Life from the Loam now, and we can dredge it out after our commander's in play. Or if we struggle for lands at some point. And the 1-1 comes in at us, just like I said. Then going for the Tail the Suspect, Investigate, can play an additional land this turn. So with multiple artifacts in play, able to cast Emry, Lurker of the Loch. And Tribute Mage is in the bin, an offer you can't refuse. Filigree Familiar, and Scavenger Grounds. Glad to see the back of the 2 lands that can get rid of graveyards while we've got Life from the Loam sat in the bin. Sacrificing a clue to draw a card. At only 4 cards in hand now. Enchantress's Presence, the first Enchantress from the Celestia player. So Life from the Loam, we are not going to dredge, just want to keep drawing cards. We were getting into a land anyway. Yeah, no need to hold up the 3 mana here. Let's try and get into something relevant off the Surveil land. And a Faithless Looting can have us look at more cards. We can both play and flash this back next turn if we want to, so yeah, let's keep it on top. Lonis, Cryptozoologist, and the 1-1 in at the right this time. And able to cast a Filigree Familiar from the graveyard thanks to the Emry, Lurker of the Loch, so enters and gains 2 life and investigates with the Lonis. Maskwood Nexus for Yarrick might be that he's gone for an elemental tribal list. And from Elavir we see a Knick-Knack Oath. So 3+ counters on it, reveal the top 3 cards. Any number of auras go onto the battlefield. There were none apparently. Revealed some lands and a Shalai. So we're not going to dredge, we know what's on top of our library. Maybe we can be really risky and get rid of all of our dredge cards here. So we'll Faithless Looting. Again, not go for the dredge, we want to draw 2. Do manage to get into another land. It is a tap land, we've got 2 Surveil cards to choose from. So we might as well get rid of the Dakmor Salvage and the Golgari Grave Troll. And then let's go for Surveil on the Raucous Theatre. Not going to bother flashing back the Faithless Looting. And the client's already lagging like crazy, that's awesome. Click this land about 100 times, there we go. Greater Good is very good if we can actually start getting Lhurgoyfs into play. So yeah, it would have been nice to get that down this turn, but I think it's worthwhile keeping it on top. Might be the only means of refilling our hand in the top few cards of our library. Kellen is the first commander to hit play. So another clue token being made. We see a Darksteel Citadel, 3 cards in hand. Might be holding up the blue mana for our commander. Uchalon is a horror, all creature types. So maybe this is horror tribal. Yeah, this is power and toughness equal to the number of crabs, oozes and or horrors you control. So unfortunately that is creature removal from graveyards, so down goes the Golgari Grave Troll. Luckily we've still got some access to dredge. And we see one of the first auras. The first aura from the Enchantress player going after the Kellen. And Snake Umbra goes on to the Oath, so that is +1/+1 when it deals damage to an opponent, draw a card, so comes in at us for the card draw. And we'll assume that the Simic player doesn't have counter magic because he didn't counter the Kenrith's transformation. Might be that he's got both counter magic and enchantment removal available to him though. Or he just doesn't care that much about having his commander in play. So do we risk getting down our commander here? Not going to dredge. draw into the greater good. And yeah, I think we do just have to try and keep up with our opponents a little bit. We're not doing a whole lot of anything without drawing into any ramp this game, unfortunately. So we'll just have to hope that our commander actually sticks in play. Simic player is holding up priority, but allows the commander down. A clue token is cracked. 2-2 swings in at us for the card draw, no doubt, and the 1-2 lowness to the right. I think we'll take the damage here. Arkham Dagson, don't see that very often, but a very potent commander. And our opponent does have a selection of artifact creatures to sacrifice here. Mindcrank, no doubt part of a combo from the Dimir player. Or Dimir so far, actually a Sultai deck, but I haven't seen any green yet. Both of the 2-2 horrors go into the right against the Enchantress deck. And taking the 4 damage means this player mills 4 cards to the Mindcrank. Seeing a Sylvan Ranger, Transcendent Envoy, Spectral Steel, and an Umbra Mystic. Then with the surplus mana, the Maskwood Nexus makes a Changeling, so Uchalon continuing to multiply, taking a Tribute Mage and an Umbra Mystic. And the more card types that are removed from graveyards, the worse it is for us. Manages to get another Umbra down anyway, a Bear Umbra onto the Oath this time. So that is now a 7-7 and is about to untap the lands, I think, in response to attacks. Yeah, just has to attack, doesn't have to land any combat damage. Drops a tap land down before swinging in with the Oath. Noteworthy that these are 5-4s now though. And the 7-7 goes in against the 5-4s. So untaps all the lands, 7 cards in hand. It does successfully deal combat damage, so drawing a card with the Snake Umbra, going up to 8 in hand. So many new cards nowadays, I'm not keeping track of all of them. A Liberated Livestock isn't one I've seen. A Catbird Ox for 6. When it dies, create a cat with lifelink, a bird with flying, and a 2-4 ox. For each of those tokens, you can put an aura from your hand or graveyard onto the battlefield attached to it. That's a very good one. Good job they got into a creature as well, because I would have been swinging in over here in order to make a Tarmogoyf. But I don't think we will be doing now. So we will dredge with Life from the Loam. Finally, see if we get into any Lhurgoyfs. Well, we trigger our commander twice, so that's pretty lucky. The Necrogoyf and the Magnivore. So the Necrogoyf comes in first, followed by the Magnivore. And this is a 2-4. Being depleted thanks to these Uchalons. Pretty unlucky for us that we've run into that creature. So now maybe we go Faithless Looting. And then hold up the Chaos Warp's probably going to be a good idea, or we could go for a tap land into the Life from the Loam. I'll probably dredge up the Dakmor Salvage, so we can decide in the meantime. Let's go for the Faithless Looting, decide which land we're going to make, I mean. Oh, and upon removing the sorcery from the bin, we've ended up killing the Magnivore. Oh well, it was only a 1-1. Can always reanimate it later if it's of any relevance. Alright, that's good. An Aftermath Analyst. Let's discard definitely the Altar of the Goyf for obvious reasons. Could maybe still go in over here. And we will discard the Life from the Loam as well. So not going to cast it this turn. Altar of the Goyf will come into play because it is a Lhurgoyf permanent. And then maybe Aftermath Analyst. And a tap land would be the better play here. So let's go for Underground Mortuary first. We can potentially look at more cards this way. Okay, Bayou into the bin should be fine. We can grab it back with Life from the Loam. So maximising the number of cards that we mill. Aftermath Analyst. And we do manage to mill ourselves into a Barrow Goyf. That's a good one. 6-7 with Death Touch, Trample and Lifelink. All of our creatures have Trample now. Apart from the one thing that can swing in. We haven't seen any haste yet, unfortunately. And this, of course, is a Dies trigger. So the buff on here is equal to the number of card types in all graveyards. Luckily this one is equal to the number of card types in all graveyards as well, so we can easily calculate what the buff will be on the Disa. And unfortunately they can block with a bunch of things here and take out our commander, so I'm just going to hold back here. I was debating whether or not to swing in over here, but I think he would gang up with everything onto our commander, so yeah, just going to have to be wary, unfortunately. If I was still holding up the Chaos Warp, I might have been a bit more likely to swing in. Could have had them gang up, and then take a creature out. We could have taken all their creatures down and, well, not got any decent damage through, but it at least would have shown us that we weren't going to get through and take some of our opponent's creatures down. So each player's upkeep, they have to discard a card to the Lhurgoyf, and discarding a Thieving Skydiver. No Soul Rings to steal. Followed by a Teething Wormlet. Should gain plenty of plus counters straight away. Immediately sees a clue token enter, thanks to the Lowness. And Arkham Dagson can grab a non-creature artifact and put it straight onto the battlefield, so yeah, very, very strong commander that we've all allowed to untap. We'll likely hold it over our heads for the next turn cycle. Holding up mana as well, that is 4, 5, 6 and 7, so hoping that it's not a Cyclonic Rift. Coiling Oracle, discarded by the Yarrick. And there are more creatures in graveyards to feed to the Uchalon. Captain Negathrod, so definitely Horror Tribal our opponent's aiming for. Only got to play this commander once or twice, but it was a fun one. I'm not sure if this one was printed in the same set or not. Yeah, they've got the same symbol, so probably in the same deck. Anyway, these have Menace now, so a 6/4 to the right, and then 3 6/4s to the left, and the 2/2 to the right as well. All these creatures have Menace thanks to them being horrors, so it seems as though this is springing the Simic player into action. And of course, it's a Cyclonic Rift as we predicted. So this is where we miss our haste even more. And our ramp. And we don't have a means of discarding our stuff anymore either, unless we can get the Greater Good down with a big creature, which we could do next turn. Greater Good into the Lhurgoyf, and that would set us up for the Disa. Maybe it's best getting Disa into play and seeing if it sticks for a turn cycle. Won't look too threatening there on its own. Our opponents don't know about the Greater Good. Anyway, there is the Enchantress's presence. Is able to go for the Kenrith's transformation again and again. Not throwing it onto the Daxon this time. So not as worried about Kellen being able to destroy an artifact. So in response goes for the Arkham Dagson activation, sacrificing the Filigree Familiar. We'll draw a card and no doubt get a ridiculous artifact into play. Alright, interestingly gets into play a Tamiyo's Journal. So gets to investigate and go for tutors off the Tamiyo's Journal. Triggers the Teething Wormlet again, has 2+ counters on it at the moment, and the Kenrith's transformation does resolve, so plenty of cards in the Enchantress's player's hand, which should surprise nobody. I'm forgetting about hand size as well actually with the Disa. We could go for Disa. How many cards are we going to have? 10 cards in hand next turn, so yeah, we don't want to miss a land either, do we? We go down to 7 immediately. We could just play our Disa and a land, and then discard the Lhurgoyf. Or the Lhurgoyf would be a better use of our mana, and a discard outlet for us. Destiny Spinner is going to keep things from getting countered. So let's see what we draw into before we make any plans. We are triggering Field of the Dead finally, during our next turn. Having to discard down to hand size, land, Snake Umbra, Bear Umbra, Fertile Ground, surprisingly. Citizen Champion, surprisingly. What's he got in hand? And Ancestral Mask, that is one hell of a hand he must have. Giving up on those cards. Right, so not going to dredge without our commander in play. And there is a Splinter Fright, which is only a 1/1 thanks to the creatures being dealt with in the bin. So 10 cards in hand, we go down to 9. Go down to 8 with a land and our commander. And then we can discard the Lhurgoyf and get it into play. I think that's a fine plan. So cast the Disa, we'll get out the tap land, trigger Field of the Dead, and hope that Disa stays in play for any length of time. So it is discarded into exile because of the madness cost, but we say no to the madness and it does still trigger Disa when it ends up back in the bin. Just noteworthy that it does go into the bin from exile, thanks to the madness if that's ever relevant, which I don't think it will be in this deck. So Lhurgoyf, having our opponent discard again, which might be means enough to get rid of our commander, or point any removal at this, which is now a 7/4. Drawing a card to the clue token, deciding to discard a Liquimetal Coating, managing to get the Liquimetal Coating straight into play off the back of the Emery. And the other one we see Liquimetal Talk as well. Turning a permanent into an artifact. Not sure what they targeted there though. Targeted the Kenrith's transformation according to the log, and it is correct for once. So swings in, and the Kellen can hit us. When it does, it will target the Kenrith's transformation, you would assume. The 4/4, we can't see where it's swinging in. The 4/4 is going down the middle, and Arkham Dagson is back online, giving up on the Maskwood Nexus during the upkeep, and finally gets into the green mana he's wanted all game. Maddening Cacophony, each opponent mills 8 cards, that's risky with our commander in play. Might get counter magic out of the blue player's hand though, or worse yet, some targeted removal onto the Disa. Luckily for them, they only see one Lhurgoyf, but it is a good one. It is the Pyrogoyf. So that enters, and it's how much damage? Equal to its power to any target, so 6 damage. Onto the Arkham Dagson is probably a good idea. Now, if they have Mithril Coat, they could get that into play and throw it straight onto the Arkham Dagson. Is that some tech that they've thought of? It taps down the Arkham Dagson at least, so we'll force the issue. So in response, the Arkham Dagson goes after the Mere Retriever. And Mere Retriever triggers, and it can go after an artifact from graveyard to hand. So that is a portal to Phyrexia. So we're all going to have to sacrifice creatures here. But our Pyrogoyf will still deal damage. Mere Retriever is pointed at our Mithril Coat is in the bin, so that is tech that they thought about. And the portal to Phyrexia, of course, is going to be able to pull back the Arkham Dagson. That might be worth a Chaos Warp at some point. Luckily we got into the zombie token when we did, but we're going to have to give up on our Lhurgoyfs annoyingly. The problem with creature-based decks nowadays is, unless you've just got haste all the time always, then you're not likely to do very well with them. It's a bad turn that Commander's taken in recent years, and this player decides to scoop, so it's worth a ban, I think. As I count it, we've got 5 lands in the bin at the moment, which is worth keeping track of for the Aftermath analyst. Utopia Sprawl and Aura going onto a land will cantrip, probably going after a board wipe. A Retether returns each Aura from graveyard to the battlefield. They don't have any creatures for the Auras here, so is it something specific that they're after? Maybe just the Kenrith's transformation and some land Auras? Okay, the Fertile Ground can't be attached to a legal object. I just thought it was any land, Fertile Ground. Yeah, it says enchant a land. I'm not sure why the Fertile Ground can't enchant a land. Oh, it says only creatures can be enchanted that way. God, it's been laggy. And the zones won't stay open. So infuriating, Magic Online. Yeah, can only enchant creatures this way. I can't show you, apparently, but there you go. Just take my word for it. Anyway, more interestingly, we have had our commander souped up, so Spectral Steel, Ancestral Mask, Bear Umbra, and Snake Umbra, so we are destined to see some Disa gameplay this game apparently. The Simic player has controlled the entire game, so it'll be funny to take this player down. Can't quite get commander damage through, unfortunately. There's an Eidolon of Blossoms, so cantrips on the Enchantress. Eidolon of Blossoms triggers itself on entry as well. This is equal to each other enchantment on the battlefield, so that will buff up Disa again. Just wondering about getting enough through for commander damage. Is it worth risking getting rid of Kellen? Although that will debuff our commander further. Take it down to a 22 power creature, then they'll still have 2 toughness, so yeah, still can't get through enough commander damage. We'll see what this is though. Hopefully it's not a means of exile. Sink into Stupor, bounces the commander and gets rid of all the auras. And we continue to not be able to play with our commander, so not going to dredge anything back. Okay, there's a Tortured Existence, which makes our commander better. But we want to... yeah, we'll just play a land for the turn. That will trigger the Field of the Dead. And then we have to deal with the portal to Phyrexia, I think. So maybe Chaos Warp will dictate what we go for this turn. Let's go for Chaos Warp onto the portal now. Alright, and takes our opponent into, I think it was a Swiftfoot Boots. Yeah, an artifact entered, so the Teething Wormlet gets a plus counter on it. And unfortunately, it's yet another turn cycle, where we just try and have Disa survive. Although it does look as though the Enchantress player is looking to us to team up against this guy, as he should. So Disa the Restless into play once again. Don't have that much black mana to abuse a Tortured Existence, unfortunately, but what we can do is discard a Barrowgoyf in order to pay the cost, and that will get a Lhurgoyf back into our hand. Probably the Pyrogoyf is what we'd go after. Then we can start trying to shoot our opponent's stuff. Hopefully the Arkham Dagson is stuck in the graveyard now. Investigate at the beginning of the turn due to the Tamio's Journal. And you'll never guess what Kogler, the Titan Ape, is going to go after. Got a Tortured Existence to grab our commander back from the bin though at least. So Lowness triggers again for Investigate. So we will say no to our commander going to the command zone. Swiftfoot Boots goes on to Kogler and can blow up likely the Eidolon of Blossoms. Viridian Revel after that. And that will look for card draw with treasure and things like that, but not many artifacts being left in play here. Liquimetal Coating, turning the Enchantress card into an artifact. So Kogler goes after the Eidolon of Blossoms, and the Kellen still has the Kenrith's transformation on it, so can't blow up the Enchantress. Looks as though all of this is going into the right. Alright, our opponent had a cast off, which is going to destroy all the creatures. There were no giants in play apparently. So yeah, the plan was there to get our commander into play off the back of a Tortured Existence and then discard something else to cheat out a Barrowgoyf if the client will stop annoying me. And we could even have swung in with that zombie against this player to get a Tarmogoyf into play, but apparently creatures are too difficult to stick in this game, though we might be able to see a litter of them off the back of an Archon of Sun's Grace. You will be glad of the lifelink there as well, thanks to being at only 15 life. Probably has a lot of auras to throw on there as well. Okay, so not going to dredge again. And we do get into a land for the turn. It's a black one as well, which I'm glad of. So first of all, we need to throw out a Tortured Existence and discard to that a Splinter Fright in order to throw down the Disa again. So discard Splinter Fright. Returns our commander back to hand, and then I think we're safe to just make a land here, if the client wants to play the land for us, that is. Not sure how many tens of times you need to click the bad lands, and eventually it does decide to come down, so try and keep hold of as much black mana as possible here. And now just trying to cast the Disa. Our clock is being wasted here, unfortunately, so if we end up going down to 0 time again, then this is why. Alright, so we've got 2 black mana available to us. I think it's best to, now that our opponent's only got a couple of cards in hand, the Kenrith's transformation is in the bin here, isn't it? Yes. We could risk the Disa staying in play and go for the Aftermath Analyst, but I think we're best just using it as discard fodder. We'll at least get a Barrowgoyf into play, and then hopefully be able to start refilling our hand with a greater good, so might yet see play from our commander. Investigating with the Tamio's Journal again. Cyberdrive Awakener gives other artifact creatures flying, and that will turn all of these things into 4/4s, so yeah, unfortunately can probably get rid of another player here. Probably goes after, I mean, you definitely want to one-shot this player while he's at such a low life total, you would think, and he needs to be careful with our Tortured Existence in play. Now the question is, do we save this player? This is only until the end of the turn, so let's see here, that's okay. Most of it is swinging in at us. Alright, so we'll have to let the player to the right go down, assuming that he is, and see what we can do here. Tortured Existence, go after the Pyrogoyf into hand. Unfortunately wasn't able to get the Pyrogoyf down before the Necrogoyf, or the Barrowgoyf even. So we'll just discard Barrowgoyf now. So we discard Barrowgoyf, it comes straight into play thanks to Disa's ability. And then we'll go for another activation onto the Tortured Existence. We'll target the Necrogoyf, and Pyrogoyf can come into play straight from the discard graveyard zone, and it will blow something up upon entry. So with its 6 power, we will go after the Swiftfoot Boots, I think, because it can still be equipped onto the 4/4. Maybe they've got some flicker stuff, but yeah, we can deal with the rocks afterwards, I think. And we do get Necrogorf back into our hand, ready to start swinging in with next turn. Yeah, if we had a bit more mana, it would have been really nice to... Just one more mana we needed for Necrogorf. I don't think we've got into a single piece of ramp this game. What turn are we on? Turn 9? Yeah, and we've got 9 lands in play. So no blocks to be made, thanks to our opponent having flyers on us. A 3/4 lifelinker is blocking, so we'll see if he accounted for the blocks here and the lifelink. He did not, apparently, so the Enchantress player does have another swing at it. Kellen could have had rid of him. Does the Enchantress player have another board wipe is the question. And if he does, do we risk keeping our Tortured Existence in play? Because that will dictate whether or not we go for Disa into the bin again. Unfinished Business returns a creature card, and then up to 2 auras from the graveyard to the battlefield attached to it, so it goes after the lifelinker again, along with Snake Umbra and Bear Umbra. And it does see the enchantment center, so gets a couple of Griffins, or they're Pegasus, not Griffins. But those have lifelink as well. And he's going to need that. Mantle of the Ancients as well. Any number of auras from graveyard to the battlefield attached to the enchanted creature. Missing haste over there though. And that is now a 9/10. So another Pegasus. And is about to grab a hell of a lot of auras. We're not going to be able to go wide on this player, unfortunately, in order to grab another Tarmogoyf, but I think we're just best pointing Pyrogoyf damage over there anyway. Although with the Necrogorf and the Greater Good, we may well be able to just win next turn anyway, because we can draw a heap of cards to this and then keep cycling the Necrogorf and cheating it into play. That might be the plan next turn. Anyway, a load of enchantments enter and make a litter of Pegasus. So this is now a 33-36, and yeah, they are tapped out thankfully, so no fear of a Lightning Greaves, or even I always forget what it's called, the Concordant Crossroads would be a single mana. I'm assuming they haven't made a land yet. Alright, we do make it round to our turn, so with 1 mana, I think we've seen the Offer You Can't Refuse already, saw that in the early game. Yeah, that's there, so could still have a Swan Song or something like that. I suppose we could risk a Dredge here. We're about to draw a load of cards with Greater Good anyway, so see if we can get some more Lhurgoyfs cheated into play. Alright, we do manage to grab one. That is Lhurgoyf, a 23-24. So it turns out that was a good play. So Pyrogoyf pointed directly at our opponent, and that is 22 damage, thanks to the massive power on the Lhurgoyf. So still in the draw phase, go through to the main. And I want to make a Tarmogoyf token at least once with Disa. I don't know if we're going to be able to play this deck again, because Bloom Burrow is on the horizon. So let's go for a couple of attacks to the right, or to the left even. Damages allowed through. We'll only get 1 Tarmogoyf token, because Disa cares about the number of players we hit, and not the number of creatures that we hit them with. So Barrowgoyf triggers. Just put Disa on the stack first, I don't think it really matters. Barrowgoyf going to mill 6 in this instance. We'll say yes to that. Do manage to hit another Lhurgoyf, and ironically, it is a Tarmogoyf. So we'll get Tarmogoyf in with Barrowgoyf, or we'll get that into our hand even, that doesn't go into play. So is this up to 1 creature? If you do, you may put that card into your hand, so could have ignored that and had it into play with Disa, that's what I should have done, didn't realise what I was clicking there. But we still get to make a token, Tarmogoyf, so 6/7 into play. Hits our opponent, knocks him down to 12. And then Greater Good. And we'll show our opponents what we can do when we draw a bunch of cards and discard a Necrogorf. Tarmogoyf is going to be handy, being in our hand as it happens. So sacrifice the Lhurgoyf in this instance, that will draw us 22 equal to its power. And no matter what, with Greater Good, we always have to discard 3. So draw a whole heap of cards. We'll go after the Necrogorf, the Tarmogoyf, seeing as how we didn't get it into play previously. And we'll discard that Nethergoyf as well. So our commander triggers twice. And the Nethergoyf triggers going into exile with Madness, but like I said before, we can say no to that. Put it into the bin instead. Although we could afford the Madness, but we might as well get it in for free off the back of our commander. So there we go, Disa on the stack, Nethergoyf And that is 25 damage, so that can just go straight onto the Simic player. Make sure that we get rid of him. So down goes that player. And then Tarmogoyf, suitingly, is going to finish the game off the back of the Pyrogoyf. We don't even see the Nethergoyf come into play over here. But that would have been a 6-7 as well, same as the Tarmogoyf. So going down to -4, our opponent valiantly takes it. Could have scooped long before then, but decided to play it out. So yeah, Disa and Lhurgoyf Tribal is pretty good apparently. Taken a while to get to it, but with constant spoiler season it's difficult to actually keep up with all the legends and, well, even the new cards for the 99 that are constantly releasing. I think we're all feeling it and have been for multiple years now. Anyway, hopefully you all enjoyed it. Big thank you to the patrons for their support of the channel. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.